father walked into a mall to buy his son sneakers, and minutes later, he was face down on the floor, guns aimed at his head. The $100 bill he used wasn't fake, but the system accusing him was. They thought they had arrested another suspect, but they just created their biggest threat. Because this man wasn't just a customer, he was a federal officer ready to burn the truth open.
If this moment felt intense, prepare yourself, because what comes next is darker, more dangerous, and far more powerful than anything you've seen so far. Subscribe to Black Battles and hit the bell icon so you never miss our latest powerful stories.
It was supposed to be an ordinary Saturday. Ethan Cole, Director of National Security Operations, rarely got time off work. But today he'd promised his teenage son, Marcus, a father-son outing. No phones, no meetings, just the two of them. They arrived at the bustling Rivergate Mall. The place was alive with weekend chatter, laughter, and the soft hum of background music. Marcus was excited. He'd been saving up for weeks to buy the latest sneakers everyone at school was talking about. "Come on, Dad, this one," Marcus said, pulling his father toward a bright sneaker store. Ethan smiled, watching his son's energy. For once, the man who spent his days chasing national threats was just a dad, proud, calm, and human. After a few minutes, Marcus found the perfect pair. They walked to the counter, joking about who had worse fashion sense. The cashier, a young woman, took the shoes and smiled politely. Ethan pulled out his wallet and handed over a crisp $100 bill. That's when everything changed. The cashier glanced at the bill, hesitated, then frowned. She held it up against the light, checked it twice, and whispered to her manager. The atmosphere shifted. Quiet tension filled the air. Ethan felt eyes turning toward him. Within minutes, 2 mall security guards appeared. "Sir, we need you to step aside," one said sharply. Ethan looked confused. "Is there a problem?" "This bill looks counterfeit," the guard replied coldly. Marcus blinked, unsure what was happening. "Dad?" Ethan calmly pulled out his ID. "I'm a federal officer. There must be a mistake." But the guards didn't care. One of them grabbed Ethan's wrist, twisting it behind his back. "Sir, you're under investigation." "Don't make this harder." Ethan's voice deepened. "You're making a mistake. That money came straight from the bank." The guards ignored him. The sound of a radio crackled. More people stopped to watch. Marcus froze as he watched his father, his hero, being slammed against the floor. "Dad," he shouted, but the guards barked at him to stay back. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. Someone whispered, "I think he's resisting." Ethan didn't fight back. He just locked eyes with his son. And in that single look, Marcus saw pain, anger, and humiliation collide. When the police arrived, they didn't ask questions. They just took Ethan away. Marcus stood in the middle of the mall, surrounded by strangers' stares and flashing lights, his heart pounding with fear and confusion. In that moment, Ethan Cole, one of the nation's top security officers, was no longer seen as a protector. He was just another man accused, because of a bill, or more, and the color of his skin. And that single unjust moment would ignite a storm that no one saw coming. The holding cell was colder than it should have been. Ethan Cole sat on a metal bench, wrists still sore from the handcuffs. The smell of sweat, metal, and disinfectant filled the air. He'd spent years training law enforcement officers, men who respected him, saluted him. But tonight, none of that mattered. The officers outside the bars didn't see a director or a patriot. They saw a suspect. One of them passed by, smirking. "Big man from D.C., huh? Guess the rules don't skip anyone." Ethan looked up, his jaw tightening, but he didn't respond. He could have called someone, his superiors, his federal contacts, but he didn't, because the damage wasn't in the arrest itself. It was in the eyes that had watched it happen. Marcus's eyes. That image replayed again and again. His son standing frozen in that mall, watching strangers drag his father away. Ethan's heart clenched. He'd spent his life protecting the country, but he couldn't protect his own child from that humiliation. Hours passed before they finally released him. The bill, of course, turned out to be real. No counterfeit, no crime. Just a misunderstanding. The officers didn't apologize. They didn't even look him in the eye. One just said, "You're free to go." Outside, the night was quiet. Marcus was waiting in the car, his face pale, his hands shaking. When Ethan opened the door, his son didn't say a word. He just stared straight ahead. Ethan sat beside him, the silence heavy between them. He started the engine, the headlights cutting through the darkness. "Marcus," he said softly, "are you okay?" Marcus's voice trembled. They thought you were a criminal, Dad." Ethan's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "I know. They hurt you. You didn't even do anything." "I know," Ethan said again, trying to keep his voice steady. Marcus looked up, eyes glistening. "If they can do that to you, what about people who don't have power like you do?" Ethan didn't have an answer. The question hit him harder than any insult that night. At home, Ethan cleaned the bruises on his wrists. The red marks were fading, but the anger beneath them was not. He stared at his reflection in the mirror. A man stripped of his authority, his pride, his peace. He thought about all the officers he'd trained to be fair, disciplined, just. He thought about the oath he'd taken to protect this country and the system that had now turned against him. And for the first time in his career, he questioned it all. As the clock ticked past midnight, Marcus quietly knocked on the door. "Dad?" Ethan turned. His son's eyes were red, his voice trembling. "Don't let them get away with this." Ethan nodded slowly. "I won't." And in that single promise, the humiliation turned into something else, a purpose. Morning light broke through the blinds, but Ethan hadn't slept. His mind kept replaying every detail of the night before. The cashier's glance, the guard's grip, the look in Marcus's eyes. He'd faced terrorists, cyber attacks, and foreign threats. But this was personal. He sat at his desk, the same one where he once drafted national security reports. Only now, a single goal consumed him: find the truth. He opened his laptop and began tracing the serial number of that $100 bill. Every note printed by the U.S. Treasury was recorded, tracked. Within minutes, he found its origin: a legitimate bank in Virginia, part of a recent federal distribution batch. So the bill was clean. But why did the system label it suspicious? He cross-referenced mall security logs, pulling surveillance access through a federal override, a privilege only someone of his clearance could use. The footage stunned him. The moment he handed the cashier the bill, her manager immediately made a phone call, not to the bank or the police, but to a private security liaison. Within 3 minutes, mall security had surrounded him. It wasn't random. It was triggered. Ethan leaned back, jaw tightening. This wasn't about counterfeit money. It was about him. He searched further, and the deeper he dug, the darker it became. Reports from the same mall over the past 6 months showed a pattern. Dozens of similar arrests. Same accusations, counterfeit cash. Same suspects, black or minority shoppers. Same result, misunderstanding. But none of it ever made the news. Ethan's pulse quickened. "They've been profiling people," he muttered. "Targeting them." He called an old friend, Daniel Hayes, a data analyst who had once worked with him on Homeland investigations. "Daniel, I need a favor." "Quietly," Ethan said. "What's going on?" "Something's wrong with this counterfeit operation. It's not about money. It's about control." Daniel hesitated. "Ethan, are you sure you want to open that door?" Ethan's reply was cold and steady. "It's already open." Within hours, Daniel sent him encrypted files, data that showed direct coordination between local police precincts and private mall security companies. They were exaggerating counterfeit claims, filing fake reports, and receiving kickbacks through crime prevention funding. Ethan stared at the numbers on the screen. It wasn't just corruption. It was organized exploitation. His anger deepened into something sharper: focus. Every file, every report, every name went into a secure drive. He wasn't gathering evidence anymore. He was building a case. Late that night, Marcus peeked into his father's study. "Still working?" Ethan didn't look up. "Almost done." Marcus stepped closer. "You're not gonna stop, are you?" Ethan finally turned, eyes fierce but calm. "When someone breaks your trust, you rebuild it. But when they break justice, you fight for it." And with that, Ethan Cole's quiet investigation turned into a silent war. 2 nights later, Ethan sat in his car outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of D.C. The wind howled across the empty lot, carrying the distant hum of traffic. He checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. Daniel was late. When the analyst finally arrived, he looked shaken, eyes darting around before he spoke. "Ethan, you need to see this." They stepped inside, laptops open, a small generator buzzing beside them. Daniel pulled up encrypted files, data he had risked his job to obtain. Rows of numbers filled the screen. Transaction logs, security reports, private correspondence. "Look at these," Daniel said, zooming in on a chain of emails. "They're not just reporting counterfeit cases. They're creating them. False alerts, fabricated evidence, all to trigger arrests." Ethan scrolled through the data. The same private security firm appeared again and again. Silver Point Solutions, contracted by several malls across the East Coast. Their CEO had deep political ties, and they received federal grants for community crime reduction. "It's a business," Ethan whispered. "They create fear, stage arrests, then collect bonuses for preventing crime that never existed." Daniel nodded grimly. "And it gets worse. I found connections between Silver Point and a handful of police unions. They share intel databases, unauthorized ones, where they flag people based on previous complaints, social posts, even facial recognition errors." Ethan's expression hardened. "So it wasn't a mistake. I was already flagged before I even walked into that store." He thought about Marcus, the fear in his son's eyes, the disbelief as he saw his father treated like a criminal. That image burned deeper than any injury he'd ever taken in service. "This isn't just corruption," Ethan said. "It's systemic manipulation, and they're hiding it under the name of safety." Daniel hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Ethan leaned forward, voice steady but lethal. "Expose them, but not yet. First, I need proof that connects Silver Point directly to law enforcement funding." He began copying the data, saving it to a secure offline drive. His hands moved fast, his mind faster. Years of intelligence training had prepared him for this. Surveillance, encryption, silent infiltration. Only this time the enemy wasn't foreign. Suddenly, Daniel's laptop beeped. "Wait," he said nervously. "Someone's tracing this connection." The lights flickered. A static noise filled the air. Ethan yanked the power cord from both computers, killing the connection instantly. The warehouse fell into darkness. For a moment, only their breathing filled the silence. "They know," Daniel whispered. Ethan stared into the shadows. "Then it's already begun." Outside, headlights appeared at the far end of the lot. Slow, deliberate. Approaching, Ethan tucked the hard drive into his coat, grabbed Daniel by the arm and whispered, "Time to move." As they slipped into the night, the truth they'd uncovered had already set something in motion. A hunt neither of them could stop. Cold rain lashed against the windshield as Ethan sped down the deserted highway, headlights cutting through the darkness. Daniel sat beside him, clutching the hard drive like it was life itself. Behind them, faint red and blue lights flickered in the distance, growing closer. "They found us fast," Daniel muttered, his voice trembling. "They were already tracking," Ethan replied, eyes fixed on the road. "We're not up against local cops anymore. This is coordinated." He veered off the main road and into a narrow forest path, tires slipping on wet mud. The government-issued SUV behind them tried to follow but lost traction, spinning out. Ethan smirked slightly, old instincts kicking in. He'd survived black ops in foreign territories. He could survive this, but this was different. This was home. After 10 minutes of silence, Ethan stopped the car under a canopy of trees. Rain dripped from the branches, masking their presence. He turned to Daniel. "Listen to me. From this point on, we move separately. They'll expect us together." Daniel shook his head. "No, you can't. I have training. You have the data," Ethan interrupted, voice firm. "If they catch me, they can't catch both of us." He handed Daniel a burner phone. "Go to the safe house in Arlington. Use the codename Liberty Run. Someone I trust will find you." Daniel's lips quivered. "And you?" Ethan loaded his pistol, checking the chamber. "I'm going to make them think I'm still running, while you disappear." Before Daniel could respond, distant engines roared, more vehicles. Flashlights pierced through the woods. Ethan shoved him toward the dark trail. "Go now!" Daniel ran into the shadows while Ethan started the car again, headlights blazing. Drawing the pursuer's attention, the chase erupted once more. Bullets shattering glass, sirens echoing through the storm. Ethan's adrenaline surged. Every move was calculated. Sharp turns, sudden stops, misleading tracks. He led them away from Daniel's route, but the vehicles kept coming. Whoever was after him had training too. Then his comms radio crackled. a distorted voice said. Mr. Cross? You should have stayed silent, Ethan froze. They knew his name. He slammed the brakes and jumped out, rolling behind a fallen log as shots tore through the night. He returned fire, precise, controlled, hitting a tire then a headlight. Sparks flew. The enemy backed off just enough for Ethan to slip deeper into the woods. His breath came in harsh bursts. He hid behind a rock, drenched and cold, but alive, pulling out his phone. He sent one encrypted text to Daniel. Get to Liberty Run, don't trust anyone. Then he smashed the phone and buried it under wet leaves. In the silence that followed, Ethan realized the truth. This was no longer just about clearing his name. They had declared war on him, and he intended to fight back. By dawn, the storm had passed, but Ethan Cross's war had only begun. He found temporary shelter in an old mechanic's shop on the city's edge, hidden beneath flickering neon signs. The air smelled of oil and rust, and the silence pressed heavily on his chest. He cleaned his wounds, patched a graze on his arm, and pulled out a secure satellite drive, the copy of Daniel's data. He needed allies. But who could he still trust? His mind went to Sarah Green, an internal affairs investigator, and his closest confidant from Homeland Security. She had been one of the few who believed in his integrity after the arrest. If anyone could help him expose Silverpoint's network from the inside, it was her. Ethan used an encrypted line to call. She answered on the second ring, her voice calm but weary. Ethan, where are you? The Bureau's saying you went rogue. I didn't, he said sharply. They're framing me, Sarah. Silverpoint, the local task force. They're running a profit ring through staged arrests. I have proof. But they're hunting me. A long pause followed. Then she said quietly, meet me at the old field office on Monroe Street. Basement level. I'll clear the cameras. Ethan hesitated. The address was familiar, too familiar. That was where he'd first trained recruits years ago. Still, he needed backup. By evening, he reached the building. Rain tapped gently against shattered windows. The hallways were empty, the air thick with dust and memory. Sarah was already there, standing beneath a dim overhead light, her badge clipped to her jacket. She looked pale, almost nervous. You look like hell, she said softly. Feels accurate, Ethan replied. Did you bring someone you trust? She shook her head. No one. Too risky. Ethan approached, pulling the drive from his pocket. This has everything, the proof, the emails, the accounts. With this, we can end it. Sarah's eyes flickered. Let me see it. He hesitated again. Something in her tone was off, rehearsed. Her hand trembled slightly near her coat pocket. Ethan's instinct screamed a silent warning. Then, before he could react, the faint click of a safety switch broke the air. Sarah raised a small pistol, her expression torn between guilt and duty. I'm sorry, Ethan, she whispered. They have my family. I didn't have a choice. Ethan's chest tightened. So you led them to me. Heavy boots echoed in the corridor. Armed men burst through the doorway, tactical gear, silent precision. Fent Dewey for cover as gunfire erupted. He rolled behind a desk, returned 2 shots, and shattered the lights above, plunging the room into darkness. When the shooting stopped, Sarah was gone, and so was the drive. Ethan crouched in the shadows, blood pounding in his ears. Betrayal cut deeper than any bullet. Now he wasn't just fighting corruption, he was fighting ghosts wearing badges. The sun was setting over Washington, D.C., painting the skyline in shades of gold and crimson. But for Ethan Cross, the light meant nothing. He'd been running for 6 days, hunted, betrayed, and stripped of everything that once defined him. The world saw him as a traitor. Only he knew the truth. He stood at the edge of the Potomac River, watching the water flow under the bridge, his reflection fractured by the current. In his pocket, a single flash drive, the backup copy Daniel had hidden in a decoy envelope before the ambush. Ethan had found it hours earlier in the Arlington safe house. Daniel had thought ahead. That small act of loyalty had given him one last chance. Now it was time to finish this. Ethan made his way to Capitol Hill under the cover of night. Every camera, every street corner, every patrol car, all eyes were hunting him. But Ethan wasn't the same man they'd framed. He'd become a shadow, a strategist, a soldier of truth. Using his old Homeland credentials and a few backdoor access codes, Ethan infiltrated the broadcasting tower of a local government news affiliate. It was symbolic. The very platform the corrupt officials had used to destroy his reputation would now carry his voice. Inside, he connected the flash drive to the system's live server. Files opened one by one. Confidential memos, signed payoffs, transfer logs. Evidence of years of corruption linking Silver Point Solutions, high-ranking police officials, and several political figures. The same people who had turned law enforcement into a business of fear. "Let's see how you like the spotlight," Ethan muttered. He hit upload. Within minutes, every major news channel in America flashed with breaking headlines. Federal data leak exposes law enforcement corruption network. Homeland Security Director framed. Evidence suggests political conspiracy. The system roared to life, alarms blaring as security closed in. Ethan grabbed the hard drive and ran. Down the stairwell, the sound of boots thundered behind him. Voices shouted, "He's on the 3rd floor! Don't let him out!" He reached the exit, kicked open a door, and burst into the street just as black SUVs screeched around the corner. Bullets cracked through the night air. Ethan dove behind a car, returned fire, and sprinted toward the metro station. The city had turned into a battlefield. As he disappeared into the underground tunnels, the flashing lights of chaos painted the walls behind him, a symbol of the storm he had unleashed. By morning, the world was different. The leak had gone viral. Major networks demanded investigations. Lawmakers called for hearings. Protests erupted outside police departments across multiple states. The truth had broken free, and with it the lies began to crumble. Ethan, however, remained a fugitive. His face filled every screen. Some called him a whistleblower, others a terrorist. He knew the fight wasn't over. The truth rarely came without sacrifice. He hid in an old church outside Baltimore, waiting for a sign that it had all been worth it. Days later, the door creaked open, and there stood Marcus. "Dad," the boy whispered, tears in his eyes. Ethan froze. He hadn't seen his son since the night of the arrest, the night everything shattered. He dropped his weapon, kneeling as Marcus ran into his arms. "I saw the news," Marcus said through trembling words. "They know the truth now." Ethan held him tight, feeling years of pain melt into silence. "I just wanted you to grow up in a world where justice means something." Marcus looked up at him. "You did that." For the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled, but it faded when a shadow appeared in the doorway. Sarah Green. Her clothes were torn, her badge gone, her face streaked with guilt. "I came to make it right," she said softly, setting the original drive on the table. "They used me, Ethan. I couldn't live with it. The director's been arrested. Silver Point's under investigation. You need to disappear before they find you." Ethan's gaze softened. "You already did what mattered." Sarah looked at him, eyes filled with regret. "Where will you go?" He glanced at Marcus. "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere they'll never look," she nodded slowly. "Then go. Before the next storm starts." Ethan placed his hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing. Don't forget that." Outside, the wind picked up. Distant sirens echoing through the city like ghosts of what was left behind. Ethan and Marcus stepped into the gray morning light, walking toward the horizon where freedom waited. Weeks later, news headlines told the rest. Mass arrests follow Homeland. Scandal. Whistleblower Ethan Cross vanishes after exposing national corruption. Public demands reform system. Overhaul underway. In a small coastal town far from D.C., a man with tired eyes watched the sunset beside his son. The world had changed. Not completely, but enough to believe in something again. Marcus turned to him. "Do you think they'll ever stop, Dad?" Ethan smiled faintly. "No, son. But as long as people keep fighting, the truth never dies." The camera of life pulled back, the ocean stretching endlessly behind them, a symbol of new beginnings. The storm was over, but the message remained. Justice isn't given. It's fought for. And Ethan Cross had already won.